Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season, I guess. My name is Dan and today I thought we would do a video all about the potential prices that players will be set at for the next upcoming season, because I think the new game is going to drop in just a few weeks' time, maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now. So we're going to start getting some price reveals soon. But I thought it'd be fun to just kind of guess and try and kind of figure out what on earth some of the player prices might be, and maybe some of you guys will agree or disagree with some of my predictions. Thank you guys who are watching right now, because I know not really many people care about FPL content right now, so big shout out to you guys who are sticking with me over this summer break, I guess. If you do enjoy this video, please do leave a like, it really does help out the channel, and do subscribe as well. But without further ado guys, I think we're going to split up some players into some different categories and talk about each of them and why there will be the prices that they will. So I thought we'd just start off with the ones that I'm sure most of you guys will be most interested in, and that's just the premium players. Now there is one major premium player missing from this list, I guess. That player will be coming up in a later section of this video, but let's start off with the premiums who were in the game last season at least. I think Salah, first of all, is going to stay the same price as he was last year. I don't think he's going to go up really. I think he was set about the right price at the beginning of the season, 12.5, and I think he's going to stay around there for this season as well. Certainly the first half of the season was so good for him, but the second half of the season, because he did tail off a bit, I don't think there's any real reason to rise his price. He should remain the highest price player of the game, just because he was the highest scoring player of the game last season, so he should stay. But I am predicting that he will be a forward position for the new season. I think they are going to switch things up a little bit, and I don't know how they're going to do this exactly, but I think maybe the category will either be heat map, so where a player is mostly positioned on the football field. So are they playing in a really advanced position, even though they're technically a winger? Are they really advanced? If so, maybe they'll be classified as a forward, or maybe if it's about the role of the player in the team, if the role of the player in the team is to score goals primarily, then that might suggest that they're going to be moved to a forward as well there. So there are going to be a couple of changes, I think, coming up in the new season, which will mean Salah could very potentially be a forward, which kind of makes sense in the modern game. He is a forward. You would never call Salah a midfielder in the general football sense. He's a forward, so it would be that situation for him. Son, kind of similar situation. I would say that he is a forward, isn't he? He plays more advanced than Kane most of the time, so it makes a lot of sense for him to be a forward as well. If Kane's a forward, then Son has got to be a forward as well. His goal of the whole football team is to score goals, and that's exactly what he did last season. Top scorer joined with Salah there. So Son, I think he's going to be reclassified as a forward as well, move into the forward position, and go up in price a little bit as well. So I do think that Son and Kane this coming season will actually be the same price. I think they'll both be 12 million. So in that slight bracket behind Salah, but still super premium, super expensive price. These players are going to be very difficult to fit all of them in your team. Kane's going to be 12 million again. Well, slightly less than last season. He was 12.5 at the beginning of last season. I think he has to come down just a little bit to 12 million. I don't think he's quite in that Salah category yet. Well, ever probably. But we got De Bruyne here as well. I think he's going to go down to about 11 million. Ronaldo is going to drop down to 11 million as well. I think Bruno Fernandes has to drop down all the way to 10 million, I think. Otherwise, it's just impossible to have him in your fantasy team, really. I mean, James Ward-Prowse outscored Bruno Fernandes last season. So, James Ward-Prowse is kind of like a 5.5, 6 million player, typically, maybe 6.5 million player. So, Fernandes, he has to drop down, unfortunately. And, yeah, I mean, to be fair, Manchester United assets in general are going to have to drop down in price just because of that last season that they had. But they're not going to drop super low. I know you guys are probably going to look at these players, Ronaldo, Fernandes, and think that's a little bit too cheap maybe. These are huge, enormous football players. These are mega stars, but they do have to drop down in price. Some of you guys will be saying, maybe actually this is still too expensive, particularly if you're not a Manchester United fan. You'll probably be saying, I'm not going to get Ronaldo or Fernandes for any more than like 8 or 9 million. And I will kind of understand where you're coming from there. But at the end of the day, these Manchester United players, because of the popularity of the club, they are going to be set at a certain price and people will buy them at this kind of price. So I think this is probably about right for them in the new season. So I don't know. What do you think about the premiums? I think this is going to be roughly where it is. And yes, I have missed out Haaland from this list, but he will be coming up in a later section of the video. So just stay tuned for that one. I think we're going to see a lot of big rises in this season just based on the results of last season. Diaz and Jota for Liverpool, I think will go up to 9 million, particularly if Mane ends up leaving the club. We are going to have to see a price rise from Diaz and Jota. It might even go higher than 9 million. The problem is, I think if it goes any higher than 9 million, 9.5 million, then people are just not going to pick them in their FPL teams because it's too close to Salah's price. And at that stage, you may as well just go for Salah. So I do think there has to be a little bit of a gap between a Diaz, a Jota, and a Salah, but nevertheless they do need to go up a little bit from what they were last season. So these players are going to be kind of difficult to get into your team, I think. These players, you know, a lot of these players, you know, Diaz, Jota, Bowen, Mount, Saka, Kulusevski, these are kind of players who last season we would probably have, you know, 3 or 4 of these players at all times during the season, but this coming season, I think it's going to be really difficult to even get more than one in your team, particularly if you've got some premiums in your team, if you're spending some money on defenders as well, some of the bigger defenders, which you're going to have to do. It's going to be hard to fit these players in, so it might be a case that you can only pick one out of these players here, and you know that Man City midfielders, for example, are probably going to be a similar price as well, so it's going to be a struggle to fit them all in, although I think Man City players will, for the most part, kind of stay at a similar value. But yeah, Bowen's definitely going up after the season he had last year. Mount, I think, has to go up as well, and Saka and Kulusevski were really amazing budget options, but they did so well last season. They were such heroes of the FPL season that they have to go up by at least a million and a half, maybe even 2 million. So they're going to be expensive players in the new season. I think we are going to see some fallers as well. So Sterling down to 10 million, I think would be about right for him, just because, you know, he's a little bit of rotation risk. He does well, but he doesn't do super, like, mega well. He's not quite in the same category as a Salah, a Kane, a Son, a De Bruyne. So I think he has to be priced a little bit more sensibly than that. I mean, Son at the beginning of last season was a 10 million player. So if you think about it like that, you'd probably say 10 million for Sterling is probably about right, particularly if he remains classified as a midfielder. I think because Sterling's kind of role is to assist and, you know, provide creativity in the team just as much as it is to score goals, and his heat map isn't mega attacking. It's very attacking, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough to classify him as a forward. So I think he's going to stay as a midfielder, just at that slightly cheaper price, which just makes him a little bit more tempting to put in your team. Jadon Sancho just has to go down in price, unfortunately. That's just due to Manchester United's form in general and Sancho's form as well. He's not really, well, last season, not kind of provided what we hoped for him. Some of the forwards, I think, are going to have to drop down in price, particularly if you've got Salah, Son, players like this being reassigned as forward players. That's going to make the forward options much more difficult to fit in. So players like Ings, Bamford, Iheanacho, they're going to have to drop down in price. Otherwise, people are just not going to consider them at all. You can't have, you know, like 20 or 30 different players all set around the 8 million, 9 million mark in the forward position. It's just not going to work. So we're going to have to reduce the prices, I think, of Ings and a Bamford. I think that's about right given their seasons, not particularly fantastic seasons. Iheanacho, you know, rotation risk as well. He was 7.5 last season. I think he'll go down to around 6.5 this season. And I thought I'd throw in Pepe in here as well, just because for some reason at the beginning of last season he was classified as a 7.5 million player. I think he has to drop down quite significantly, particularly if he's not getting in the team, to about 6 million for people to even consider him. And then even after that, you're only really going to pick him if we've got you know, like a Saka or someone injured perhaps. So let's talk premium defenders, and I think these 6 players will be the most expensive players in the new season's game. Trent has to finally go up to 8 million. Surely it's time to put him as an 8 million player, because he scores so many points. He outscores all of, like, so many of the premium players. You know, last season we saw just a few players in the entire game actually score more points than Trent. It was kind of like Son and Salah, and that was pretty much it. Well, maybe there was a few more, but, you know, Trent right at the top of the tables. I think he might have even been the 3rd or 4th highest scoring player. I probably should have written that down before recording this video, but there we go. But yeah, my point is that the last couple of seasons he's just scored so highly. He's outscored any other player in the 8 million bracket every single season. You know, he is an 8 million player, and you do pay that much money for him. You will pay that much money. You have to pay that much money for him if you want a player who is going to squeeze that many FPL points in your team. He is just as good as the premium forwards, the premium midfielders, just as good as them in terms of scoring points, just as captainable. He has to go into that even more premium price bracket, I think. Robertson, similar, had a fantastic season last year, arguably better than Trent's season in certain spells of the season, but he is always going to be slightly cheaper than Trent, I suppose. Cancelo Cancelo was arguably defender of the season, you know, a player that was essential for pretty much the whole season, particularly with Man City's defence coming on so well, and Cancelo becoming that nailed-on player, which I think is the reason why Cancelo was priced quite moderately at the beginning of last season, just because he wasn't considered to be a nailed-on player. But now that he is, I think he has to go into that 7 million price bracket. Van Dijk, 6.5 million, that's just what he is every single season, and to be fair, those Liverpool defenders score like absolute mad. And then we've got James and Chilwell, who I think are going to be about 6 million. I would say that James, although he was very trolly at times, we know he's very explosive. He can score a lot of points, so it does have to be slightly expensive at least. And Chilwell, even though he didn't play a lot of games, in the games that he did play, he actually averaged the most points per game of any defender in FPL. So for that reason, I think he is a player that we really want to have a close look at. I tell you what, if he's less than 6 million next season, he is going to be an almost essential pick because he really is that good. His point scoring potential really is that high. I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen him play. Many of you guys may have forgotten, but he was just so attacking. He was basically a striker for Chelsea, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys, particularly the players who play as wing backs with a back three behind them, they may even be reclassified as midfielders. I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. So James Chilwell could be midfielders next season. I doubt it, but it's definitely something that is possible. And if so, that's going to really make them so much less appealing, I guess. But if they're defenders and if they're these kind of prices, I think we're going to have to consider them. Let's look at some promoted players. So of the 3 promoted teams, I picked 2 players from each of those teams and kind of picked out the ones that I'm probably most excited about coming into the Premier League from an FPL perspective. So Mitrovic coming off the back of an insane season, 43 goals, 7 assists in 44 games. Absolutely insane. You'd probably say, you know, he's got to be a 7 million, 7.5 million player. But I think the history of Mitrovic's performances in the Premier League, I think one season he scored 13 goals. That was a few years ago now. But typically when Mitrovic comes up into the Premier League, and he does yo-yo, he's a bit of a yo-yo player, he doesn't reach the same levels as he does in the Championship. You may say he's improved. You may say that Fulham are building the team around him a little bit. So, you know, maybe that could actually be a bargain in the end, but I just can't really see FPL kind of giving a 7 million price to a newly promoted player. Like usually it's about 6.5 million for the top scorer of the Championship from the previous season. That's what we kind of seen with Tony. We've seen it kind of Pookie around that price as well when he's been their top scorer of the Championship. So I think it'll be about 6.5. Johnson is an interesting player. I think he'll be 6 million, but if he's a 5.5 million, then that's definitely one to look out for. Solanke, a very good scoring season, you know, 29 goals. If it wasn't for Mitrovic scoring 43, a lot of us would be hyping up Solanke a lot, but I think he is going to be just a little bit cheaper than Mitrovic at 6 million, but still, maybe worth considering. I know he's not got a great record in the Premier League, but I don't know. I feel like he could be a sneaky one. If you think Bournemouth are going to do well in the new season, and if they sign a few new players, you think it's looking good for them, then maybe Solanke is going to be a good pick. Wilson is kind of interesting. He got a hell of a lot of assists last season, that's for sure. So if he comes in around 5.5 million, I think that's worth looking at. Billing is an interesting one. I think they will give him about 5.5 million just because he scored 10 goals and got 10 assists. But when he played in the Premier League, he wasn't kind of getting that many goal contributions really. So maybe he's a 5 million player realistically. I don't think I'd buy him for 5.5 million, but I think that's just around the price that he'll be given. And I put Spence here as well. I know technically he was at loan or on loan at Nottingham Forest, but this is just assuming he signs permanently for Nottingham Forest. I know a few of you guys will be saying, you know, he's signing for our team, he's signing for Man United, he's signing for Spurs, he's signing for Arsenal, he's signing for whoever. A lot of teams are interested in Spence. I think we all know that. But just assuming that he signs for Nottingham Forest, I think it'll be 4.5 million, and I think that would be a really, really good pick for the new season. If he signs for someone else, you know, we're probably looking at 5 million for him, if we're honest. But maybe 5 million could be good if he, you know, if he's nailed on in whatever new team he comes into. Maybe that could actually be not too bad for 5 million. But I certainly would prefer him at 4.5 million. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see him at that cheap price. And finally, just for a bit of fun, I thought I'd look at some of the biggest transfer rumours going around at the moment, and just for fun, guys, I know you're going to be absolutely screaming at me saying, Jesus is not going to sign for Arsenal, Perisic is not going to sign for Spurs, Paqueta is not going to sign for Newcastle. Look, this is just for a bit of fun. I just thought we would kind of guesstimate what kind of prices some players would be if they came to the Premier League. Haaland is already signed for Manchester City, so we know about that. I think he will join Salah as one of two 12.5 million players in the new season. I don't really see how they could make anyone else 12.5 million other than maybe Son. I think it'd be difficult to make anyone else 12.5 million. So yeah, I think Haaland is going to be the other big, real big expensive player, and it's going to be kind of difficult to get all of these players in. You're pretty much going to be you're going to have to choose between Salah, Son, Haaland, KDB, maybe Kane, maybe. You can only pick two really in the new season, and I think that's going to be quite exciting actually. Just seeing who people go for as a combo. I don't think many people are going to be brave enough to go without Salah. But I don't know, Haaland and Son, that's kind of speaking to me right now. It's kind of speaking to me, and maybe go for one of the other Liverpool forwards, a Jota or a Diaz instead for that Liverpool attacking cover, I guess. I don't know. Let's see. We'll make those decisions in a few weeks' time, I'm sure. But we've got Jesus here. I think he'll be around 8.5 million again, even if he signs for Arsenal. That's kind of a similar price to Lacazette, what price he was. I think that's probably about right for an Arsenal forward, to be honest. Particularly as Arsenal are not like a fantastic team these days, are they really? They're not even in the Champions League. So I don't think you can overprice these Arsenal players too much, but they still are in that bracket below the mega big teams, right? So Jesus is going to have a little bit of price to him. Perisic at 7 million, really interesting. I think he's going to be classified as a midfielder, but I think he's going to play, well, if he did sign for Spurs, I think he would play as a fullback. So maybe that's actually not the one, to be honest. I don't know. That's one I'm kind of really curious about, how Perisic is going to fit well, first of all, in Spurs, then how is he going to fit in FPL? What is he going to be classified as? What is he going to be priced as? That's going to be a difficult one if it happens. Paqueta is a really interesting player, had a really good season in League 1 last season. I think he'll come in around 6.5 million because I do think those Newcastle assets will be slightly underpriced, and I do think there will be some real opportunities to get some bargains for Newcastle next season. I really do think that the FPL are going to underprice some Newcastle assets, and I think Newcastle will have quite a good season. Going by the basis of the second half of the season they just had, I think that could be an interesting one. Lingard at West Ham for 6 million. I think that would be pretty good. And I put Koundé here as well. 5.5 million for a Chelsea defender. Sounds about right. Hopefully he should be fairly nailed on, but you're probably not going to get too many attacking turns for some returns for someone like Koundé. So 5.5, you pretty much just be looking for those clean sheets, occasional bonus points, and the very, very occasional goal return, but nothing mega, I don't think. So I don't know. That section at the end there, just for a little bit of fun. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Right, there is the end of the video, guys. What did you think about those predictions? Are there any you think I have got so wrong? If you think I've got some wrong, please do let me know in the comments. If there's any other players you kind of want to make your own predictions about, or what kind of prices you think they're going to be, I'd love to read some of your comments just to see what you guys think various players' prices are going to be, because it's always so exciting to kind of find out what's the prices going to be like. It's just an exciting time of the pre-season, I suppose. So yeah, but those are my predictions. Hopefully you did enjoy hearing about them. If you did enjoy this video, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. Without further ado, guys, I think I'm going to end this video and go on holiday, because that's what I'm doing in a few hours time. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, once again, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye bye.